as you guys know, it's been one of the most trying years, well, obviously in our lifetimes. And, right now we know that our economy and our current government is not working for us. So what is the best solution? And, there's obviously very big support for both universal basic income and for a federal jobs guarantee.
Can I say that I support both?
I do too.
I support any and all means in which to help people in both short and long term and any variety thereof. But yeah, there's definitely, pros and cons. And so we're going to get to.
I think it is very important that, we recognize that there is no perfect economic solution. We all want to be able to just have the ability to have self-determination, live with dignity, and not live in poverty. I mean, that's, basic needs, humanity forward, if you will, and modern monetary theory. And it's coming together right now with a lot of great ideas. So in this corner,
I didn't mean to make it like that because I don't want anything like, contentious.
No, but it's all in good fun because, we're going to have a back and forth, but this is important because there are benefits and there are pros and cons to both sides. But it's very important that everyone understands why this conversation needs to happen, because we need to talk about solutions. We need to make solutions a reality.
Yes.
The whole bickering back and forth about nonsense is not going to get us anywhere, but this might. And that's why we should be doing this more regularly,
all right.
I hope. So in support of universal basic income, the host of a fantastic YouTube channel, Nerds for Humanity?
Yes.
I got that right. I was going to say Nerds for Yang, but it's
I've been on there. I like that show.
Beat him there. Tom, welcome to Generational Change.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
And on the other side, we have a friend of the show, a champion of modern monetary theory, the host of the Macro and Cheese podcast, and a huge advocate for the federal jobs guarantee, Steve Grumbine. Audio on, my friend.
Lo and behold, it's better without the mute button, isn't it? Hey,
everybody.
Someone's
going to make a quip about you sounding better when
I
can't hear you.
You like the hat? You like the hat?
I am.
It's the closest I could get to Heisenberg, but I'm wearing a dead shirt. So what are you going to do?
No, I like it.
That's some good graces right there. So that's all good. So here's how we would like to start. I think it's very important. Tom, we'll start with you. Your background. What is universal basic income and why do you support it?
Sure. So I'm coming to you from California. My day job, I work in technology product development. Have been in tech since '99. Have become very kind of interested and passionate supporter of basic income ever since Yang brought it to my attention. And it kind of aligns with things that I feel are very important. Addressing income inequality is probably the biggest one. And acknowledging that a lot of that income inequality is because our economy is becoming more and more a kind of winner-take-all outcome. And that there needs to be an economic floor for people, because not everyone's going to get that, AI data science job at, Facebook or something like that. And so I'm also a big fan of programs that scale and are efficient. And cash is, I believe, a very efficient way to transfer resources. And I also think that people are the best judge of how to deploy those resources to benefit them. So yeah, I'm a big fan of basic income. I don't know as much about the job guarantee, so I'm interested in learning as well, but that's my background.
Sounds great. And Steve, obviously share with us briefly about your background and certainly why you are a big proponent of modern monetary theory and with that a federal jobs guarantee.
Sure. So first of all, thanks for having me on. It's nice to meet you, Tom. I got to listen to a few of your shows. It was really good. I really appreciated the fun. One of the things that brought me into this world was I was a former Republican, and I lost everything, literally, family, the whole enchilada, and I couldn't make heads or tails of why it was happening. House was going in foreclosure. It was a terrible time, literally terrible time, close to suicide. And people that understood MMT at the time, which was about a handful of people, started coming to me and saying, listen, Steve, there's answers to the problems you have. And so as I started learning more and more, I started realizing that poverty was a political choice. I started realizing that we can indeed have nice things, that we never ask how you're going to pay for it when we bomb a country in the Middle East. But we seem to always ask how you're going to pay for it the minute you talk about healthcare, job programs, any kind of healthcare, anything at all for the people, student debt cancellation, you name it. And so I became a huge proponent about 12 years ago for MMT, and have really put my time and energy into understanding a larger framework for program policy creation, scalable. And I come from an IT background too. I've been in IT since 1993. I'm a project manager serving in the IT space. I deploy huge optical networks and things like that. And I used to be in software development. So ultimately, I'm a process guy. I look at inputs, outputs, tools, techniques, and I find the federal job guarantee solves the problems, many of the problems. First of all, it provides us with a floor. It provides us with a living wage. It provides us with benefits, and it provides us with social inclusion by bringing it to the local level, allowing local communities to decide what they need and making it about the person. What is that individual? What can they do? What is their sweet spot to serving the local community? This is not make work for the man. This is not capital driven. This is actually a public option that would have otherwise been a bunch of unemployed people. We're now providing what could be seen as a transition job for high paying jobs. We're also seeing what could be a great breakthrough for single moms who have been trapped in bad marriages and want to get out and away and are afraid to death to leave bad situations. And it also ends generational poverty, because anybody that wants a job, and we're talking about a job that they want, not a job that somebody else tells them, a job they want. They create their own jobs in the job guarantee program. And so it's about redefining work. And I couldn't think of anything more exciting to reinvigorate democracy at the local level, and providing that floor. And the reason why it also stuck with me, last point, is we already have Social Security, which is poorly underfunded. It is very, very minimally deployed. It already serves survivor benefits, disability benefits, and retirement benefits, and could be expanded to meet a multitude of other needs. So I figure we already got that. Let's focus on the job guarantee and a Green New Deal.
Very well said. Let's try to keep it within a 90-second window, since obviously our time is limited. We want to get as much across as we possibly can. I think it's very important to talk about long versus short versus long-term solutions. In my personal opinion, I'm of the belief that a universal basic income, considering how much debt people have in particular accumulated over the past year, would definitely serve as a very solid short-term solution. The federal jobs guarantee is something that can take us back to the days of FDR, when there was always jobs that were necessary, and that was more of a long-term solution. So if either one of you want to jump in and discern whether my point is one that you agree with, disagree with, that in terms of what I can see, I think that there is the potential to have both options as the economic solution. But in terms of what is in the here and now, in terms of short-term versus long-term, I lean UBI short-term, federal jobs guarantee long-term. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Whoever would like to go first, please share your thoughts.
Tom, I'll let you take a whack at it.
Thanks, Steve. Well, I would agree that if you wanted to provide help to someone who is struggling to, make rent or pay for a kid's, healthcare needs, cash is a pretty fast way to address or at least mitigate that problem. But I would also argue that in the long run, as people's needs evolve, cash has that kind of flexibility where a person, this year, helping their child with, getting some tutoring or something might be a top priority. But then 2-3 years from now, they might need more space, and that might be rent. So part of the benefit of basic income is that nobody tells you what to do with the money. You make the decision based on what your family or your household needs. And so I kind of feel like it has benefits both in the short and long term. But again, I agree with Jen's opening remarks that this may not be a one mutually exclusive kind of debate.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, so Steve, when you came the last time we talked, and this is one of those, like, I don't have a head for this very much, like, this is not my thing. I hear but will you explain like what it is that concerns you about UBI? Like, what's the counter to that? Because obviously it's something that I think most people would support in a case of an emergency. Like, that's something that we should all be getting since COVID started,
Yep.
Or at least subsidizing our payrolls, something like that in emergency. But what is your general issue with UBI? Because I remember it's extremely reasonable.
It is. But I want to take a second to say the emergency payments and retroactive payments that should have been going on during this pandemic are not a UBI. I want to be crystal clear. They're emergency payments, and there's a difference. And I want to be sure, because I know what Tom's looking to do. And while I don't agree with him, okay, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that they're the two that are the same. They're not. But I fully support retroactive payments that should have been going on during that pandemic to get us out of that debt that people incurred through that. No. But the problem I have is going back to Milton Friedman, the Mount Pelerin Society. The libertarian side of the world has sought long and hard to dismantle the social safety net, the New Deal, for as long as we can remember. And this really was a stronghold of Milton Friedman. And so there are many, many people, not in our little echo chamber, our little left-wing echo chamber where everything is hunky-dory and roses, but outside of our bubble, people genuinely have been looking to tear apart the social safety net. And they would love to throw cash at you and say, now go be all you can be, baby. Go find healthcare. Go find all these things. And most people lack power. They lack agency to be able to make those kind of decisions. The people we're talking about, the poor, they genuinely, many of them are uneducated. Many of them have no family. They don't know what to do. So the idea of providing just cash, I think, while leaving the structural inequality there, fundamentally is status quo. It doesn't actually do what we think it's going to do. But to Peter's point, I fully agree with pandemic relief support should have been done and should be done today, retroactively back to the beginning, up to present, and until we're completely out of it. So that's my angle.
Okay.
One thing that I do want to interject with, which I think is important, and this is a defense of UBI. I think that the other thing that has to be considered, and we obviously talk about a federal jobs guarantee, and that could be a litany of different things. I don't think and maybe this is more on the capitalist side, because I know a lot of people have, there's a lot of people these days leaning towards socialism. But the one thing that I do think is important to remember is that if you're an entrepreneur and you have an idea and things that you want to see come to fruition, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a small business owner. I do think it's important to recognize that there is a lot to offer in terms of the economic makeup. Now, while some people, may be better suited to, let's say, do a federal job that could be, covered by a union, for example, there's obviously a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built in this country. We're decades behind other parts of the world, but there's also a lot of creative minds that would probably be much better suited with having, some people equate UBI essentially being a social security for all. And I'm fine with that. But that is something that I don't think we emphasize enough. The entrepreneurial spirit, I think, is still an essential part of our society and of our economy. And Tommy, if you'd like to take it first, and then Steve, by all means, jump in right after.
Yeah, I mean, I should be transparent here. I know this audience is not a huge bastion of libertarianism, so I could sense that in the chat. But I do personally fundamentally believe that individuals should be free to make as many decisions for themselves as possible, and that many individuals are budding entrepreneurs. And they don't all need to start like the next Tesla. They could be a local entrepreneur, a small business. They could, provide a service to their community. And having a basic income is kind of like, the country investing in you, in your business. And if that allows you to start a tutoring business, or start a landscaping business, or to pursue, open a small bakery, whatever it is, like that's awesome. But it's hard to predict centrally, like what those businesses need to be. And so I guess I do believe that when people can compete and they can kind of find what the market wants, that it can be a win-win.
Steve?
Well, clearly I come from a different perspective. I was a former Ron Paul guy. I full on used to be a libertarian, and my history, you can look in my profile pictures and see the progression. But I'm not a big fan of markets, because markets are created by government typically. And when you think about the laws and by which all markets are governed, you realize how markets have failed us. However, I want to say this. The job guarantee, federally funded because it's the currency issue, or locally administered because we all want to be part of our local community, kill our carbon footprint, become active within our space. Someone like what Tom said, an entrepreneur, these are opportunities where people could be a part of a job guarantee program where they could teach some of their skills and share things with others, network with each other, become social beings, while simultaneously receiving significantly more money than a UBI, where a job guarantee, let's say it provides a socially inclusive wage of $15 an hour, plus a full range of federal benefits, from healthcare to, college to, all kinds of other things, anything, support in general to help them facilitate their next moves. This is what we're talking about. It's a framework for a much more robust society. And while I'm certainly not an individualist and I'm not an objectivist, I left Ayn Rand alone a few years back. I still think that it's very important to understand that everybody has their own unique situation. Okay. So this is what is beautiful about the job guarantee in the sense that people can have a different idea, different arts and crafts, musicians, etc. Bill Mitchell, who is one of the originators of this, talks about surfers in the job guarantee, and they would collect water samples maybe while they're surfing, or teach water safety courses to the local community as part of their surfing job. I mean, so there's a great way of taking this and just kind of reimagine something different. We're not talking about unions, because the government can afford great jobs. It doesn't have to just be the low wage, but the job guarantee is not intended to be that. The job guarantee is setting a base wage.
Right.
That's a great segue, because one of the big issues of our time that a lot of people like to talk about is raising the minimum wage. There's a cost benefit analysis to that, obviously, depending on where in the country you live. Tom, you live in one of the most, cost of living areas in the United States. Steve, you live in Pennsylvania. Obviously, the cost of living is significantly different between the two areas. A lot of people have harped on the idea that a $15 minimum wage, this is what we need to have. Not that I'm against that. I'm certainly in favor of raising the minimum wage, but I think a living wage is much more essential, because cost of living is different depending on where you are. There's different types of jobs that are needed in different places. How do you guys feel about a living wage?
I'm all for it.
Tom?
I think it's great, especially if you have a basic income underneath that. But I would say that, setting a fixed minimum wage, to your point, nationally has some difficulties in terms of efficiency, in that, $15 an hour in one place may not go as far as in another. But ultimately, I do feel like there is going to be a problem where many jobs will be performed by technology. And as the wages go up, it will be a greater incentive for businesses to not hire people, And you know, you can see this like some McDonald's, like there's like nobody working there anymore. It's just like
I'll use an even better example. One of my favorite places to shop in by far is Costco, and even that's a place where, you know, Steve, you're seeing it now. I prefer the express line. I prefer to just, you know, ring it up myself, and that's nothing against somebody who's working at a register. It's more or less a natural progression, if you will, in many respects. And I do think that that is something that we can't ignore. I mean, I saw a video, I think it was on CNBC, that showed that there's a White Castle that literally now has a robot that basically can lift the burgers and the fries. I mean, it's kind of, it's amazing how far we've come. And so on the one hand, I think defining what the federal jobs guarantee looks like in terms of how broad of a reach is that going to be? Like, is that going to be all jobs? Is that going to be manufacturing jobs? Is it, you know, obviously dealing, like I said, with the infrastructure? There's in terms of technology, we're so far behind, but we are seeing it in real time, how the benefit of UBI is very real, because there is this massive amount of outsourcing that is happening. There's massive amounts of automation that is becoming part of it.
You're breaking up, man.
Yep. Yeah, he is.
Here we go again.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to switch to audio. Hang on one sec.
I don't know why it did that.
Well, let me take a crack at
All right,
this.
it's
So,
coming back.
you know, when you think about automation, it should benefit all of society, right? So rather than just having a few people on a UBI, why not look at reducing the work week for all? Why not look for socializing those benefits across the country? That's first. Second of all, I know for a fact that the wagon wheel maker still resents the steel radial. And I know that damn Abacus hates the calculator. And I'm sure the calculator really hates the Apple. And I'm sure the Apple really hates the Mac. So each one of these things throughout history has displaced others. We're in a service economy now. We have stopped caring for each other. And all you got to do is look out your window. All you got to do is go down your street. And you will see tons of things that the capitalists didn't find to be profitable to do. Lots of work, lots of things that are important for your local community. I mean, kids are not even able to play sports now because they can't afford to buy the pads. We can do so much, so much. Our imaginations are trapped in austerity, trapped in this fake belief that the government is broke and can't do great things. And until we eradicate that mindset, we're always going to be having diminished expectations and diminished dreams. So, you know, from my standpoint, John Yarmouth, who's the head of the budget committee, came out the other day and just said, hey guys, we can afford it all. We are the currency creator. And I think that that's an important step in making these bold changes. I wouldn't be so worried about McDonald's. Let's go ahead and find better jobs, more caring jobs in the local communities, and start, you know, reviving culture again, start reviving the soul of the community. Let's build bridges. Let's start really connecting with one another again. I think it's important.
Yeah.
So I think, Steve, you and I think we agree on the problem and the need for healthier, more stronger communities where people, you know, have brighter futures. My point is about the original question around the living wage is even if you raise the minimum wage to some number, there are people who just can't get a job because the industries have left. Like if you're in West Virginia and we say, okay, now mining companies like minimum wage is now $20 an hour. Number one, a lot of those mining companies, I don't know if they have a big, bright future. And number two,
hopefully not.
Like, yeah, then what are those unemployed people going to do? And I know that's part of the benefit of the job guarantee, but another one would be like, hey, you've got this floor of cash, and now's your opportunity to retool or maybe to move to an area where there are more jobs. And so that's my concern about the focus, not of this conversation, but sometimes we focus a lot about the minimum wage, which only applies to people who have jobs.
You're absolutely right. I couldn't agree with you more. So one of the things that we focus on in the MMT space, especially as we look at the Green New Deal, because again, I'm looking at scaling much bigger. Our environment is burning up right now, and we've seen it in the West Coast. I'm sure out in your way, Portland, Seattle, Canada, Arctic. So we talk about what we call a just transition, a transition job away from these dirty jobs, and to give people, we could nationalize payroll, just as an example, like we could have done during this pandemic. Those individuals that are being let go from these dirty jobs, we could very, very easily provide a transition wage through that period, through the job guarantee, but step it up. There's ways of bringing people into a more inclusive society. But your point is spot on. And this is the point. The job guarantee is not intended to be a professional level to professional level job. It literally is the floor for whatever area. And I really do like what Peter said about having that wage not just static. I think if you're in San Francisco, $15 an hour isn't going to buy you a cup of coffee. So I think you have to really consider where you're at. But on the flip side, though, I think it'd be hard pressed to look at those tents and say there's not work to be done. So for me, in my position, I would say, let's look at a federal job guarantee as the base. Let's look at a job transition, a transitional job at the mid-range as people migrate away from dirty jobs to revive the economy. And then let's look at expanding Social Security. And that is my stack right there to ensure that nobody is left behind, no ableist stuff. I mean, I want to see Social Security funded proper. I want to get rid of FICA taxes. There's not a single libertarian out there that wouldn't love getting rid of FICA taxes. We can pay a socially inclusive wage in Social Security as well. We haven't had cost of living increases forever, so it should be done.
That's one of the reasons I also wanted to have this conversation. Jen and I talk about all the time about how progressives and libertarians actually share a lot of common ground. And there's a lot of people who like to pretend that that is not the case, depending on what the issue is. Obviously, there are very strong philosophical differences in many ways, in many different aspects of economics. But something as simple as Medicare for all, I would think, makes total sense from a progressive standpoint, from a jobs guarantee standpoint, as well as from a libertarian, even a UBI standpoint, because it's the most cost-effective way to implement a federal program. At this point, it would seem almost nonsensical. As Jen likes to say, it's like debating a flat earther when it comes to universal health care. And if the ultimate goal is to be the most efficient while providing the most service, I would think that that's something you guys would agree on.
I think Medicare for all is not strong enough. That's my angle. But yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, I think definitely.
Yeah, I certainly would agree that the current healthcare system is delivering very unsatisfying outcomes for extraordinarily high costs. It needs to be reformed, and I hope that something like Medicare for all will get more traction. It's probably one of those areas where the markets are not working as you would want them to. And so that's where you have to kind of do what works. And so, yeah, we would for sure agree on that.
An interesting question that just popped in my head, and I'm curious what you guys think when it comes to education, because there's a lot of different aspects of education, whether it is going to a regular college and you're studying a variety of different, philosophies and whatnot. But I don't think trade schools get enough of a push. And I think this is one of those areas where the federal jobs guarantee and UBI can really intersect, because as I've said, we are really far behind in a lot of ways, especially in terms of, the global scale as far as where we are in terms of infrastructure. And there is a lot of trades that I think a lot of people would like to learn, but it takes time in order to get to that point where having the necessary skill to obtain such a job would be possible. So I think in that sense, having UBI and a jobs guarantee attached to our education system, I think could have a lot of value, especially when it comes to trade. How do you guys feel about that?
Oh, you hit on a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, Peter. So I absolutely feel like we currently raise our kids, many of us, with this idea that you either go to college or that's it. And that is the ultimate marker of successful parenting and growing up. And the reality, as many of us know, is a lot of people don't finish their college education. And those that do end up working in jobs that do not require those 4 years spent attaining that degree. And I had the opportunity to live for a few years in Switzerland, where they take a very different approach. Where, yeah, you could go to university for, I think, about 10% of the students end up there, but it's not considered like the end all be all and the ultimate goal. And there's great pride in becoming a, master roofer or plumber or electrician or, healthcare worker or a teacher. And these are highly paid, high skill jobs, but they do require years of training and apprenticeship, and that does have a lot of government support, because the market doesn't really want to pay for unskilled people learning, so that's why the government subsidizes a lot of it. But I totally think that whether it's federal jobs guarantee or basic income, how do we prepare young people for great jobs is something that we don't do enough of. And I feel like there's an overemphasis on the 4-year college degree, and there are so many people graduating with tons of debt with majors in like sports marketing. No. And there's not that many sports marketing jobs out there that are going to pay back that debt.
That's a great point, Steve.
Yeah. So I'm all about making students get paid. I see no reason why we can't make that a part of a job guarantee. I think that part of job training, trade training, all of this is baked in. If you want to get a chance, take a chance and read Pavlina Cherneva's book, The Case for a Job Guarantee. She really lays those things out, because this is so much more. We're literally trying to take people out of thinking about making profit for the man and thinking about social value. We think that people getting educated in whatever they want to get educated in is socially valuable. So I would be all for making that part of a job guarantee program. And again, remember, part of this here is the intentional, very, very, very intentional alteration of what we deem as work. How many hours? I mean, I'll tell you right now, I put in probably 100 hours a week running Real Progressives and Real Progress in Action, doing the New Untouchables, doing Macro and Cheese. And this is all up till 2, 3 in the morning. Okay. And that work is uncompensated. I receive not a penny for it. I mean, we receive as a nonprofit, we receive income, but it's to help, build out what we're doing. Yeah. And so it would be great to receive, even if it was $15 an hour, boy, oh boy, I assure you my family would be saying, okay, maybe it's not a hobby anymore. You know what I mean? And so maybe they would be a little bit more accepting of the time I spend away from them. But yeah, I'm completely on board with this. I mean, this is investing in people, humanity, our communities. So absolutely.
This is a very important question, maybe the most important one of the night. We have a lot of organizations that spring up that are trying to get people elected into local, state, and federal office. Most of the time, they just focus on the party politic dynamic. I personally think that the best organization, as far as a national organization run, is the Sunrise Movement, because their primary focus is on the environment and it's on a solution. And the Green New Deal is obviously part of it, but their primary goal is to elect people into office that are going to fight for this primary issue, which is saving our environment. How do you guys feel about the prospect of potentially starting, let's say, a UBI caucus, an MMT caucus, where basically candidates run for office on the premise that they support this particular type of economic solution. And obviously, our main goal is to make sure that those that are fighting for that are not taking corporate special interest money, who obviously have no interest in these type of solutions. How do you guys feel about the prospect of having that type of a focus where maybe it isn't necessarily important to focus necessarily on the party, but more so on the policy?
Tom?
Oh, thanks, Steve. You're very gracious. I actually left this out of my intro, but I also am a co-founder of ofthepeople.us, which is kind of like a Yelp for local candidates. And the idea is to help increase awareness of candidates running for local offices who may not have run before, and then make it easy to find them nationally based on their policy interests. So if you were super fired up about a federal jobs guarantee, you could then find all of the candidates running that support that, or it could be basic income or Green New Deal, whatever it might be. But generally, that is based on the argument or the hope that more competition in elected office will help bring more diverse and different points of view into our federal government. And I definitely feel like the current system, specifically of the two parties, is not set up to allow for new voices to emerge and have a seat at the table. And so, that's going to be a long-term effort, but it's probably something we're going to need to do. I feel like there's more than two parties in this country, and there's so many great ideas that there should be a more diverse and more robust debate. And it can't just be like, well, you're on this team or that team. I think there's a lot of ways to look at things. But Steve,
yeah, this goes to what I said in the very, very beginning. Like, I support any type of policy that's going to help us have people have a life of dignity and justice. Like, it's one thing if, as long as we all agree that the end result is to not have people living in the streets and to not have people unemployed and not being able to feed their families. So, I just think it's important that we agree on the mission. And then I think all of these are really good tools. Like, I don't think it needs to be an either or situation. Am I wrong? Am I missing something in this?
I want to answer the other question first, but I do want to take a crack at that. I think one of the things that in Real Progress in Action, that's our 501c4. We want to be able to support candidates that obviously understand MMT, because we don't want any more, Austerians running for office. We want to get them out of there. Okay. I call them murderers by proxy. So with that said, I really believe, because of the climate situation that we have right now, I think that we have to attack it multiple angles. I think we really need mutual aid. I think we really need organizing without parties included. F the parties. I'm more concerned about people fighting back. And Sunrise Movement, it's a great organization, and they support a lot of the things that I'm pushing for. So I'm absolutely in alignment there. But I believe that a lot of this is something that we have to do outside of the electoral system. That said, I fully agree. And the reason why I let Tom go is because I did some research and I loved what his organization's doing. So I wanted to give him a chance to put that out there. But as far as what you said, the only concern I have here is understanding the macroeconomic effects of an automatic stabilizer, a counter-cyclical automatic stabilizer is very different than giving cash permanent, just period, across the board. And so these things have very different effects on the economy. And it's not what they do. It's not wanting to give people money. It's understanding that there is a near and present danger of the right-wing Koch brother version of the UBI that wants very much so to destroy everything that happened under FDR's watch. And we want to make sure that that does not happen. So in my opinion, it's a Trojan horse. I don't think Tom means it as a Trojan. I want to be perfectly clear. I think there's very, very good people that want very, very different things than I do, that I agree with them in spirit. But I believe that there are very, very bad people that want the same thing for very different reasons. And I want to make sure that the bad people do not get a chance to destroy society and turn this into even a more dog-eat-dog dystopian world than it is today. And that's my fear. So that's my caution.
That's a fair point. I think that there is this, there should be a distinction between sort of like the Milton Friedman Ayn Rand philosophy of economics, in the sense that it's a standalone. There could be certain aspects that are justified, and then obviously several I've read both of them, so I can definitely say that I do not agree. But again, that's why having conversations like this, I think, are essential. I think that we should absolutely do this again. I think that, with I'm keeping an eye on the clock for you, Tom. Don't worry. But I think it is very essential that we do have these types of conversations, and we'd love to obviously have you guys back again. The important thing here to remember is that even though we have disagreements, I think when it comes to the primary solutions, whether it's a living wage, whether it's, the environment, a Green New Deal, and whatever final capacity or component that ultimately ends up becoming, and then of course universal health care, I do think that there is a lot that we can agree on than disagree on. But with that said, this is obviously both of your gentlemen's opportunity to make a final pitch as to why you feel in the short and even potentially the long term that your particular economic philosophy as it stands right now is the path that should be pursued, at least in terms of which we should go down the path first. So, Tom, if you want to take it away for UBI, please do so.
Yeah, I think I'll wrap up the way I started. I think that we should all gird ourselves for a rapidly changing and unpredictable economy, and a labor market that will be heavily disrupted not only by automation but by international trade and global competition. And because of that, it is not fair for a few people to win the career lottery and generate enormous amounts of wealth and have other people literally starving in the streets. This is the richest country in the world. We can do better than this. And so my view is that having a progressive tax system that then funds a basic income and provides a floor is a step in the right direction and will provide people who need it with some extra help and some stability and some predictability. I don't think that it solves all of our problems. I think for sure we have to also deal with climate and healthcare. But ultimately, one thing I will say about UBI is I think it may have a chance to get a majority of supporters in the Congress and the Senate over the long term, because it does appeal to some compassionate conservatives who are just concerned about government efficiency and it might be more okay with direct cash payments. And we got to find things that we can pass. And so that would be my view. But like I said before, I also think that we need a combination of policies, and we have a lot of challenges facing us. So, but thank you again for having me on.
Absolutely. Very well said. Steve.
Yeah. So, obviously, from a MMT perspective, we understand that federal taxes are literally functionally deleted upon receipt. They're never reused. A government dollar is spent one time. So when we think about the ability for the federal government to spend on the people, the federal government has infinite power over the dollar within its confines, as long as it can tax in its dollar. And so when I think about what we can do in terms of the here and now existential crisis about, the climate, our healthcare, you name it, I think it's very important that we have a federal job guarantee that allows all those people that have been left behind, instead of worrying about the lottery of life, be able to be in a program that literally allows them to get job training and gain a career and have a socially inclusive wage, a living wage with benefits. And so I think the federal job guarantee is core to building a productive and happy and healthy, connected society and a sustainable future.
Could not have ended on a better note. You gentlemen have obviously been fantastic, and we certainly hope that you will come back again. I think we can do an even more advanced series on this. I think that this is really the evolution of independent media, and all four of us are a part of it, and we all need to be working in concert, because the reality is our interests are not the same as those who are currently in charge. So as long as we keep having this conversation, I think it's going to evolve in a very productive way. Tom, thank you so much. Please plug your show before you go, so everyone knows where to check you out. And then Steve, you'll do the same.
Check out Nerds for Humanity. It's a YouTube channel that I host. I talk a lot about, well, there's a lot of Yang Gang people there, but I also interview researchers, authors, have a lot of congressional candidates.
I've been on it. I've been on it.
That's right. Jen's been one of our
I feel
best
like
guests.
I should say, hello, nerds.
That's right. So I really appreciate anybody who wants to check it out. I often show a lot of data and charts as well for those of you who like that kind of thing, but a lot of long form conversations. It's Nerds for Humanity. And then Of the People is the nonprofit about promoting more local candidates. But it was great being on, and it's great meeting you, Steve, and Peter, and seeing you again, Jen.
Thanks, Tom.
It's been a real pleasure. Steve, please plug it all, my friend.
So I'm the founder of the nonprofit 501c3 nonprofit Real Progressives, and also the founder of the 501c4 Real Progress in Action. You can find most of our YouTube videos are on Real Progress in Action for obvious reasons. So you can find us on YouTube, also at realprogressives.org. I'm also the host of the Macro and Cheese podcast that focuses on heterodox economics and cheese. So we get a little bit of politics in there, a little bit of history and stuff like that. I'm also the host or co-host of a very important series that I hope you all will check out, called The New Untouchables, the Pecora Files, which is about literally the housing crisis and the fraud, the control fraud, the elite control fraud that Wall Street has perpetrated on us all. And hopefully we can bring Wall Street to its knees. So please check both of them out. They're both on our website at realprogressives.org. And Jen, Peter, and Tom, I had a wonderful time. Thank you so much. This was absolutely a pleasure.
I want to encourage. I've been watching the chat, and there's definitely like the war between the factions going on there. You've got like it's going.
Hey,
on.
that helps our channel. It gets more viewers.
No, it's great. But I just would really encourage that. Like, if you're somebody who regularly watches Tom's show, I would really encourage you to watch some of Steve's stuff, and vice versa. I think it's really important for people to at least just see what's going on out there, because ultimately we kind of need to be on the same team. So I would really encourage people to check out everybody's stuff. That's my point.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. We will definitely have you back again soon, and vice versa. Tom, Steve, have a wonderful evening, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
See you later. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.